Oh, hello, right. Hello. Welcome to the Mental Health Bar. We're live now. I've just let good evening. It says Claire, she's one of my mods. Hello, this is Chris Brooker. Hello, everyone. I am here with Chris Brooker, a wonderful guest for this evening. I'm going to try and keep my voice slightly softer because I was getting very excited talking to you, Chris, and I get all worked up and stuff. I met Chris on, not had a notification yet, says Claire, who's again my mod. So we have to wait a little bit. Chris is new to Twitch. He's heard about it, but he doesn't know exactly how it works. So we have to wait just a little bit longer, Chris, because it notifies people. And people will be waiting for the show. And it's just sent it just now. So I've got it and I can see I've got us on our little screen down here. So that's good. Right. Yeah, it's all right. It's you thought it was going to be hysterically professional. It's very hodgepodge. We do it. Yes, another Chris. There's going to be two Chris's. This might get confusing. But for the most part, we're going to have a nice talk. Chris Brooker. I'm going to have to stop. Otherwise, people are going to think I'm talking about it in the third person. Chris is here. He's a wrestling character coach and comedian. That's how we know each other, because obviously we met on the circuit in Stoke. But we'll tell that story. I think we've met before then, but that's the standout story. And yeah, we're here to talk about coping mechanisms in mental health and generally have a chat and answer some questions from the chat and things like that. We're going to we'll just have a quick chat now, and you can introduce yourself actually, Chris. Tell us what you've been doing, how long you've been a comedian, and also what you've been doing in lockdown. Because
and if anyone's confused by this, what I've decided to refer to as hot Chris on Chris action. Hot
Chris on Chris action.
The power of Chris. Chris squared.
Chris squared.
This is more Chris than you realize you needed, but you're going to be up for it. If I say Chris, I'm referring to you, and if you say Chris, you're referring to me.
Yeah. It's right, just Chris. That. Yeah. Luckily, our voices are only just significantly different. Only just.
Yeah, I should lean into my slight West Country burr, and maybe that'll make things a little less confusing.
Heavily.
The name for a group of Chris's, I think. I was on suggest a crisis of Chris's.
A crisis of Chris, especially in this scenario. When we're here like this. So one of Clara's just said, I can take a double Chris. I don't know if, it's not that kind of show. But
not yet, but it's early. Let's see where the world takes us.
Not yet. It won't be. Don't encourage her. There we go. But hello, Ben. So I will greet people when they come in as well. Just because it's nice. It's good. It's a chat. Right. Sorry. Yes, Chris. You keep going. Tell us how you're here.
I mean, I think today's lesson is don't Chris the streams.
Don't Chris the streams. We have Chris the streams. That's what we've done.
And I feel like such a tourist in a modern era here, especially the way you introduced me to everyone and said, well, this other Chris's are available. He's not really sure about Twitch.
It's just so, because we do get guests, and you get some that are like, yeah, I get how it works. This is okay. I've pulled up the stream here, so I'm watching it, and I can do it. And then we've got other people who are like, and they just don't really know. And you're somewhere in between where you've heard about it, but you and you know how it works in public speaking, so you're very aware of what's going on. And yeah, exactly. And that's what we're going to.
Happy to have another human being to talk to. Quite honestly,
happy to have an adult. Well, we've just had again. I think tonight is a good reason to have a show as much as any. As we've just had the announcement that we're coming out of it again, same time every year now.
Yeah.
just
a loop. What the definition of insanity is, which also is appropriate for this podcast. It seems to be like
it's podcast /stream /
you're right.
show.
So, you were right. I don't understand this.
It's okay. The terminology is fine. You're still doing
it. Thank you for inviting me on your Magic Lantern show.
The magic box. But we're gonna talk about mental health coping mechanisms, how we deal. We both of us are sufferers of mental health problems. We're gonna tell people how we talk about it. If you're in the chat, you can ask questions. The mods in the chat, Claire and I believe Tefkas is Steve's here as well. Will make sure that no one does anything inappropriate, and I will have a look. And I'll ask appropriate questions. So hello, Evil Auntie. So yeah, give us a wave in the chat if you're here, so that we know. And also, if you have any questions for Chris, leave them in the chat, or even for me. But they've pretty much asked all the questions from me.
So essentially, you are if this was a school situation, you are the principal and you have prefects. Are these your mods in the?
Yeah, mods are prefects.
So basically keeping everyone in line.
Yep, that's kind of it's more like I'm Zeus, and these are my. No, it's not quite like that. But it's they'll make sure everything runs smoothly for us, and we'll make sure that I can see the chat here as well. So don't make him think he's a principal, as Carl has said. So thank you very much for that, Carl. I don't dress like a school teacher, but
I refer to you as a principal. Immediately, you upgraded yourself to deity, and not just any deity, like head of the Greek pantheon.
I mean, he was the most human of the gods. The guy he actually had to challenge himself. I was just about to make a joke, but he actually had to challenge himself about sleeping with women. He was like, "Can I do it as a bull? Can I do it as a swan?" That's what he was. Yes, he can.
Sexual green eggs and ham. Can I do it as a bull? Can I do it when you're full? Oh, all right. Sorry.
They've said we're a rowdy but benevolent pantheon. Because with the community, so we'll have people that aren't part of the community yet, but when they do become, that sounds like it's a cult, but my community is called the Glitches. So
did you ever come and do the gig I used to book in Keighley?
I can't remember. I'll be honest.
There's a reason I'm saying this. There was a running joke that I wholesale stole from an improv group out in the States.
Right.
Because one of the nice things about comedy is when you have a regular little gigs in little towns, they love it because there's nothing else to do and it's their show, isn't it? They love the fact that they have something that's theirs.
Yeah.
And I emceed and booked this gig for about nearly 10 years. And it became a running joke every month. It was almost all the same people in the same seats, but you'd have like one or two new people.
Yeah.
Every time I had something set up with the rest of the audience. And every time there was a new person, I'd have a chat to them. I say, well, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Just so you know, this is how the comedy works. We get 4 great comedians. We all get together once a month. We have a laugh. And we're all quite welcoming. I don't know what you've heard about parts of Yorkshire. It can be a bit standoffish, but here we're quite welcoming. We're like a big happy family, but I want to make it very clear, we are not a cult. At which point this is every regular's cue to start going, we are not a cult. We are not. And purely to see the look on this newcomer's face when they went, oh God, I'm not getting out of here alive. Oh.
That's fine. So just because you've done that, Claire has changed so we have a command in the chat where it's Discord, so that people can go and join the group, join Glitch, because that's where we talk about it after, and there's a mental health support group there, and there's a radio station and stuff, but she's changed it to say it's definitely a cult, and then it brings up the link. So it's a very I have to verbally describe it because, as you rightly say, this becomes a podcast, so I have to absolutely, so everyone in the chat can see that, but I do have to, and then this person, the more you declare you're not a cult, the more I assume you're a cult. Them's the rules. So that is true. So Chris, discuss, how long have you been a comedian? What's made you how long have you been a comedian for? Let's talk about that.
May of this year will be 20 years since my first gig.
20 years, wow.
Decades.
Ever since you were 11 years old. That's incredible.
25. But 25. It's something I've done longer than anything else in my life, apart from breathe and grow hair. So 20 years, full-time, more or less, making the bulk of my living from it since 2009. From my very first gig, which was everything's changed so much. My first gig feels so archaic now. It was for the BBC New Comedy Awards.
Wow.
And it was Hen and Chicken in Bristol.
Your first gig?
First gig, yeah. But it was it's something that it was just an open, anyone could apply.
Oh yeah, give it a go.
And this is the archaic bit now. Considering that I've already come into Twitch, called it a podcast, called it a magic lantern, got my divining rods out and gone, oh, here be dragons. The fact that I will date myself further.
Oh no.
We need a glossary for this for some of the younger folk in the chat and the not a cult, because I was very naive to stand up when I started. I had a few ideas, and I saw the BBC New Comedy Awards, and I thought, I'll apply and have my first gig. I thought that was how it worked. So I had to send a video, physically post a video in the
like a
post.
VHS tape.
And I'm happy at this point you only have to explain VHS tapes to people. In 10 years' time, I have to explain post. But I had like a mini VHS camcorder where you
Yeah.
had to take the little cassette out, put it in the adapter, which then stuck it in the. And I filmed it in the bedroom of the house. I was living with my parents at the time down in Somerset because I was doing dead well, and with the dog running around. And they, for some reason, they went, "Oh well, this guy's got a joke," or maybe they had quotas to have some actual brand new comedians.
Ginger, right?
Went and did
That's
it,
what it is.
and
Redhead.
so first gig, May of 2001, and some footage missing. Here I am now, you know. although I think I might allowed. I think I might write the last year off because I had 3 gigs last year.
No, I
It's
wouldn't.
the least I've gigged since 2001. I gigged more in my first year than I did last year.
2020 is a lost year. So that brings me on to my next point. You've obviously changed. I'm just gonna. There's other people who have said they couldn't do comedy. They don't know if they could, but they'd like to write comedy. And I say that if you want to be a comedian, you probably don't want to do stand up. You just end up doing it. You think.
Do you know what? It's funny that whoever it is that said that, because I didn't want to be a stand up when I go all the way back. I wanted to write comedy, but there's one thing I hate more than going on stage, and that's rejection. And I figured that if I could have a go, maybe that would kind of grease the wheels to get writing done. But then the stand-up then became the thing.
Yeah.
Not least of which because I'm fundamentally a very, very lazy man and with a terrible work ethic. And it turned out that I was quite good at making shit up as I go. So all of a sudden I had this outlet where I just kind of got away with it for a while. But if there's someone who wants to have a go at stand-up or comedy, and I know you've coached it and you've taught it, I've taught it a bit as well, is always just, if you think you might enjoy it, have a go. Because the worst thing is that you'll just go, well, that was the worst experience of my life. But I tell you what, you'll have done something that most people don't, you know. Yeah. And you must have had this at some point. The laundry list of people who tell you how brave you are doing stand-up. I have had police officers, firemen, a bomb disposal expert once.
Bomb disposal.
A wrestler who was very famously thrown off the top of a structure called a Hell in a Cell.
Oh, Jesus.
And landed on basically knocked out a shoulder. Some people who get thrown in thumbtacks for a living have told me I can't do what you do. So, you know, it's if you can I'm turning into Rudyard Kipling. If you can keep your head, if you go out and just do it once, even if you never do it again, you'll know you've done it.
You'll know you've done it. It's a great feeling. Just to achieve something you didn't believe you could. Now, that obviously brings me on to my next point. The 3 gigs last year, you've pivoted. That's the choice term that we've all adopted. Pivoted, much like myself. You've pivoted and you're doing wrestling character coaching. So, wrestling character coaching, what does that involve? And how did you get into it? And I know we're going to move on to the mental health part of this in a minute, but we want to find out. You've got to build the foundation before we start living in the house. So, baseline. So tell us, how did you get into that?
So, I've been a wrestling fan since I was 15 years old, and was introduced to it by a friend who had a big brother who had Sky TV, so he'd record stuff off Sky and send him highlight videos that had things like The Simpsons, which there was a time when Sky TV meant you were rich.
Yes, I remember that. Yes.
The peasantry, much as us, didn't have Sky TV.
No.
So having this magical video which had The Simpsons, A Critic, Highlander, and
Highlander,
good old Adrian Paul there, yeah. An entire TV series based around cutting off someone's head where you couldn't show decapitation. Anyway. So, it really was the Highlander version of Babe Station. It promised more than it could actually show you.
It promised more.
So, WWF, and we watched this one of their shows, and I saw the British Bulldog Davey Boy Smith, and he hit a move called a vertical suplex, where he lifts up a wrestler called the Warlord, who was bigger than him, held him upside down over his head, and it blew my mind. And then I became a fan, and to the point of obsession. So again, some footage missing.
Yeah.
Over the years, I got to how did I get to the point of coaching promos? I've got to sort of get my ducks in a row here because it sort of forks and it comes back together. So
Yeah.
I through a very fortunately timed tweet in 2011 when I was new on Twitter. See, I understand Twitter. That's about the limit of my.
That's where we're at
now. Granddad social media, right? So I tweeted a gentleman called Mick Foley, who is now a WWE Hall of Famer, very famous. He was the guy who got thrown off the aforementioned Hell in a Cell.
He did.
Because he'd started dabbling in stand-up comedy over in the States, and he was over here on a tour, and I tweeted and I said, "Well, you're here. Do you want to do a stand-up gig with me?" And he said, and he messaged me in the middle of the night, followed me on Twitter, and said, "Well, I can't now, but we'll talk about this later." One thing led to another, and eventually we were able to organize him doing a tour. And it was the first time I'd done anything like that, kind of fake it till you make it to some extent. But fortunately, I'd learned enough by doing stand-up, and I had people that had run tours that I could go to for help. Was really, really good, really successful. Kind of opened the floodgates for other wrestlers to come and tour, do spoken word events, because as a rule, they're quite articulate. They're very interesting, eccentric people with a lot of stories. And it led to me working with other guys like Roddy Piper. Did a tour with him, which was a very long 2 weeks, rest his soul. And that was him calmed down. Lord knows how I could have dealt with him back in the 1980s at his craziest. And a gentleman called William Regal, who is a Blackpool lad done good, who is now out in America. He'd been wrestling there full time since in the 1990s. And at the same time, I kind of got involved in some of the smaller indie promotions over here, like the local British ones, because I started to train for a little bit. And then I found out I don't like pain or exercise. So it really kind of put a ceiling on what I could achieve in the world of pro wrestling.
Well, absolutely.
However, because I've been doing stand-up for a while, at one of the training sessions, the head coach went, "Do you want to see if you can help people with their promo skills?" Because a promo is wrestling term for the interviews. And you know, everyone, if you're not a wrestling fan, you know what you think of. You think of some big guy going, "Brother, I'll tell you something, this weekend when I gets my hands on you, I'm gonna tear you limb from limb." What you gonna, you know, Hulk Hogan thing. The idea that you are wrestling is the bastard son of theater and sport, and it's unlike anything else in the world. Imagine having to do a one-take live action movie where you are literally actually getting hit in the face over and over again, but you still have to maintain your character, remember where you're going, remember what you're doing, and tell the story. It's hard, but a big part of it is your character and how you express yourself. So, and a lot of people don't practice that or work on that, because that's, again, the irony that people are more scared of talking in public than they are. I've seen people who will throw themselves off the highest point of any building without a second thought onto concrete, onto nothing, but hate the idea of being given a live microphone. It terrifies them.
Well, yeah.
So I basically went, okay. So I tried it out in this one session. I used a couple of ideas I used from stand-up and from some improv that I did, and it seemed to go quite well. So on and off for a while, I dabbled with it. And then a few years ago, because when William Regal and I, he's a wonderful human being. Anyone who says don't meet your heroes, just pick better heroes. We became really good friends, and he knew that I was interested in potentially doing a little bit of this teaching on the side because I really enjoyed it. He invited me to WWE's tryout in Glasgow to sit in when they have potential wrestlers coming in, like all the British wrestlers would come in. They have a promo tryout where they come in and they do an interview to get their character across. And I was given the chance to sit in on that, which blew my mind. And just learn and see how he taught people. And so I sat with him and Robbie Brookside and Johnny Saint, who were both stars of the old World of Sport days. And then to sort of further, so that happened a couple of times. I managed to do that in Glasgow, managed to do it in Manchester. Then a couple of years ago, I had a midlife crisis, came into a bit of money at the time, and fucked off to America for 3 months. Right away, because I had friends who lived in Orlando, and I thought I'll go over there for a little bit, then I maybe tour and see where it takes me. And I had a call off William Regal on the first day going, well, Chris, while you're here, would you like to come along to the WWE Performance Center and sit in on the promo classes? And I went, well, let me think about it. Yes, of course I would. So I did. And it really kind of lit the fire under me more than it was before, to be able to sit in and learn and see how the sort of top end of the business teaches these skills. And Mr. Eagle's not a fool. He wanted me to learn, to take it back so I could help sort of the grassroots level here. So that's kind of where I am now. I had a couple of false starts, mainly because the old mental health thing, which we may get into a little bit later.
We will get into.
we should probably at least address it in passing. But it's called the brain bar, not the arm bar. Let's not get too carried away with
mental
the
health bar. The brain bar is the
bar. Oh yeah, that's the Apple thing, isn't it? See, young people in your bars. I thought bars were rapping things. Anyway, my apologies. I should be more comfortable with branding. So back on the topic. So I got to sort of come back, and then everything like so many of us around about February, March last year, I had everything kind of going in the right direction. I've said that I've had to make a public apology because I said, do you know what? I think we can afford a holiday this year. And that was in February 2020. I was like, oh no. Oh no. You can't take all the blame for that. I mean, I at some point said, do you know what? I think my diary's getting pretty busy this year.
Yeah, I think we all did that as well.
I think I'm finally turning the corner. And
to be fair, no, keep going. Sorry, this is the problem with Zoom calls.
So we've all kind of had that moment, and it's sort of one good thing about the pandemic is it's actually made me figure out how to use Zoom, and I'm now coaching folk online. So people, I'll have a Zoom class with someone, and we'll just basically they sort of if you. Wrestling is like stand-up comedy. In comedy, you have your jokes. In wrestling, you have your moves. And in comedy, it doesn't matter how good your jokes are if nobody cares about you. If you cannot get people to connect with you. Connection over content is my phrase that I just beat to death.
It's absolutely right.
So, in the same way that Hulk Hogan wasn't the greatest wrestler in the world, oh Lord, no, but he had a connection. I always compare him to Peter Kay, who I think technically, and as from a writing point of view, isn't the best comedian in the world, but he had a connection with his audience, and they absolutely lapped up everything he did. So it's the importance of making that connection, having that sincerity, and having that ability to express yourself. And with wrestlers, because it's such a nerve-wracking thing, some of them just put off doing it until they have to. As a result, they then do badly, then they put it off again, then they do badly. It's a little sort of cycle that goes on. So my thing is just getting people to, well, just sort of myth busting that it isn't sorcery, it isn't alchemy. It's like anything else. You just have to take that first step and then plug away at it until it gets easy.
Yeah, wow. Until it gets tolerable. So let's, as you said, you rightly addressed. We've been talking for 25 minutes, but no, I think that's a good thing. Like I said, we have to talk about the background, and I always think that we should always talk. So even when we're not talking about mental health, we are talking about mental health because obviously. I think comedy attracts a certain type of person, and wrestling attracts a certain type of person. There's obviously I don't think well-adjusted people become stand-up comics. I don't think that's normal, comfortable, now maybe, but before not so much. I'm
always very suspicious of anyone who seems well-adjusted in stand-up comedy.
Yeah, well, that's true. Well, that's why that's why, and like we said before, this is like I'm a full-time streamer now, and I'm a lot happier. But it's because the person that I'm talking to constantly is a computer screen and a camera, and everyone in here has been talking to me via the medium of text. Though I find it like the same. We get a bit of a connection. So you have obviously had some trouble with mental health over the years. Do you want to tell us what you've had specifically problems with, or tell us of some specific incidents that you've dealt with?
It's one of those things when it's really hard to pin down because I've not had like an official diagnosis per se. I've not had a lot of it has been. It's not until you look back, I think, that you realize. I think we're now in a position where people are more open about it, more able to discuss it than we were. One of the good things about having all this social media is that there is a discourse and there is an ability to bring these things to the surface. When I was a teenager, didn't know. I think in hindsight, I believe, looking back, and this is something I've only sort of realized over the last couple of years, because over the last couple of years, I've realized I've had to do something about it. I've been seeing a counselor properly for the first time for the last sort of year and a half, and I wish I'd been doing that soon. And realizing that depression and anxiety has been a big part of my life ever since I was a teenager. But then it kind of hit me when I was 15 or 16. But at 15 or 16, teenagers are miserable. That's the accepted thing.
Part of it.
It's like, oh, I'm a teenager. Okay, this would be why I feel like this on a sort of regular basis. And it wasn't until I started to look back and went, okay, there's a pattern emerging here. Every so often, I would have periods of time where I would lose motivation. I wouldn't be going, I'd lose jobs. I would lose contact with people. And it's not until you kind of, it's one of those things, you can't see a pattern if it happens once or twice or three times. And that's one of the signs. It takes, I wish it hadn't taken me like 25 years, 30 years to spot all this, but it happens when it happens.
And a lot of people that are watching today, I know that we've discussed in the past that that loss of it's losing the jobs, losing contact. It's something that just happens and it becomes a rolling theme, and you just realize, and you blame yourself. You blame yourself for it all. You completely, and it feeds the monster. It feeds that sense in your body.
Yeah, it's like you're in an abusive relationship with yourself, basically.
Yeah,
and it doesn't happen. It's not like you wake up one morning when you're 14 and it goes, "Hey, kill yourself." It's like, "Oh, shut the fuck up." It's a gradual thing, and it all kind of
grinding.
And it's when I look back. So when I mentioned that I've been full time doing stand up since 2009.
Yeah,
and the reason I'm full time is that I hit one of those points in August of 2009. Where I just went, I can't do my day job anymore, and I quit. I quit specifically, and it was content warning. It was the first of my 2 suicide attempts that kind of made me decide to move on. So it's something that I've talked about this on stage once before. It was at Harriet Dyer's fantastic night in Manchester, Barking Tales.
Yeah, that's great.
Stand up night, talking about that. It's wonderful. So I talked about this story where I'll do the abridged version, obviously. I basically hit this point on a probably Wednesday or Thursday night. I think it'd be a Wednesday. Wednesday is probably the night to do it, If you have to pick a day of the week, it's gonna be Wednesday. Maybe a Sunday. Yeah. Maybe a Sunday night, but Wednesday definitely. Yeah. So I was I decided I'd had enough. And I lived in Fallowfield in Manchester. And so I went, okay, I'm going to do it. And it's something that I've realized is that, and talking to other people and hearing accounts of folk who have gone through with it and have succeeded in taking their own lives, is it's not, the misconception is that the people who are on the verge of killing themselves are miserable at that point, and they're not. I wasn't. I was very much in this kind of euphoric, I've made the decision. That's it. Sweet. I'll do all my family a favor. Everyone will be better off. I'll be out of this. It's just brilliant. Why didn't I think of this sooner? Gosh, what am I like? So I got my car, Skoda Fabia, very sensible. Nice. Diesel, because, comedians. And I drove to Asda in Hume. It's a big Asda. With the intention of going in, buying a hose pipe, sticking it in the exhaust of my car, parking in a corner of the car park, and just doing away with myself. So I went in, walked into Asda, and went looking for a garden hose, and couldn't find one. I was just like, okay, well, I'm sure. And what supermarkets are like? They have their seasonal aisle where things move around. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
But I swear I'd seen it here before. They have the little JML stand or something. I was going, oh, this would be, love of God, right? So I went, well, this is bullshit. And I was doing the man thing of not wanting to ask for help as well, because
Right.
even in that instant, and then I went, oh, well, this is ridiculous. I'm going to have to ask someone. And in that split second, my brain, you have that moment where your bubble of consciousness just expands, and you have to take a step back. And and that step back is often enough to just pull you that little inch away from where you need that almost sweet spot of doing it.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, okay, well, if I have to go and ask someone for a hose pipe, and then they take me to the hose pipe, I then buy that hose pipe, take it outside, and all of a sudden, first of all, imagine being that person who sold a hose pipe to someone who then
Oh
used
my God.
their premises to do themselves in. As
Yeah.
well as I realized that all of a sudden I was going to be suddenly this punchline in a Darwin Award thing, or one of these sort of bleakly humorous bylines in the newspaper
on a
or something.
website. Yeah.
In Asda, and nowadays, I mean, sort of potentially memes around Asda value, and
Oh my God.
I hope at least those pound out the trolley, and all that kind of stuff. And it's that moment where it made me take that step back, and it made me kind of go, okay. And once you do that, I started to think about, and I've been very fortunate. In terms of, I have, and this is something else I've realized of late. The things that you take for granted when you're at your bleakest, is that for example, I'm very lucky to have a family who are very supportive, very loving, and when you have one, it's very easy to forget that not everyone does.
Yep.
Realizing the impact it would have on them, and then the friends, and then the people who are closest to me, and it was enough to sort of take me back from that edge, and it helped in a way. But what I found for a very long time, and again, this is the sort of the long game of it, is often with these sort of bouts of depression, and what I later realized were anxiety as well, is that a lot of what I was doing was just kind of like duct taping shit together, putting the bit of tape over the warning light, and then going, okay, it's fine now, it's fine, So things like, being signed off work with depression, going, okay, I've had my time off work, I'm fine. Going on medication for all of 6 weeks and then coming off it.
Jesus.
All this kind of shit.
Not even going to start working.
Exactly. It's one of those things where it took me so long to realize that it is not. There's this. Generally, there's the thing I had was something that a lot of people have, which is, I'll be okay when.
Yeah.
Everything will be fine once I have insert whatever it is, physical
weird
thing,
material,
achievement. So like life is a PlayStation game, and you're looking to platinum the fucker. I'll just get another achievement. I'll just get another one of these. And for a long time, it was, okay, I will be fine when I get to do stand-up full time.
Yeah.
I will be fine when I get a relationship. I will be fine when I have no more debt, for example. And you set these goals, and there's nothing wrong with having those goals, but it's that attachment of this bit to it. And what is it, the old saying, no matter wherever you go, there you are. You're still you. You're still carrying the same baggage. And it's something that I'm still coping with. And I don't mean necessarily coping well all the time.
No.
As evidenced by sort of January, where I spent most of it under my fucking duvet.
Well, I think a lot of people have spent lockdown suffering. Like, a lot of people have. I've had meltdowns during this time. I know a lot of people have. I just have to there's some things I think you would appreciate in the chat. Claire has said that she agrees. She even felt bad because we were talking about feeling bad about ourselves. She said she even felt bad for her failed suicide. Like, she couldn't even do it. She felt bad about that. People have said that this is like a Mitchell and Webb sketch, hunting down something to end your life with, but being too repressed to ask for help. That was made in a sweatshop.
Oh yeah,
it very much so. And I thought that this was a great. so a friend, one of the users made it. One of our listeners, a friend stopped himself from doing something dark due to having a trifle in the fridge that was going out of date. He didn't want it to go to waste. Just those kind of things, because it's the little things that bring you back into reality, don't they? And you realise that for me, when I've got to my darkest, it's always been like my kids. They always have brought me. I've been like I can't leave them without a dad. I couldn't do this. I couldn't do it. And it's always just, as the darkest parts of my life, I've always come, and my wife, and I've just been dragged back to it. We've all been to that dark part, but you said now you're coping with it. So what have you? I mean, you said that was one. You said there's a couple of attempts. What was the?
Well, there were two.
There were two. Yeah.
So to sort of set the scene for it. So I had been. So it was 2018. So it was just sort of 3 years ago now. So it's 2021 now, isn't it? I feel like we've lost a year for some reason. Oh. So 2018. I'd spent a few years before then really kind of struggling. I'd come out of a relationship that didn't end well, took a lot of the guilt for that, sort of bounced around living different places, didn't get help because, it's only in your head. You should be able to sort that out yourself, shouldn't you? And then I'd sort of gone, it's and seeing this sort of fluctuation, it always seems to be one of the sort of side effects is life always seems to be feast or famine. Things are going really, really well or absolutely appallingly.
Yes.
And I'd been in the position where, particularly after the tours I'd mentioned, where I was like, oh, I'm flying on top of the world. I've got a relationship. Everything's great. I've got plenty of money to, oh, well, I'm screwed now. I'm single. I've messed that up and I'm now broke again. So I'd been up and down, and I was in a position where I was sort of financially in a lot of trouble. But I was due, my grandfather passed away and I was due an inheritance. It just took a very long time to come through. And it was one of those things where I go, well, when this, again, stop me if this sounds familiar, it'll be all right when. It'll be all right when I get this through. And it came through. And would you know, it didn't make everything better. And instead, I was sat there just going, why don't I feel better? I've got no reason to feel bad. I have no reason to feel bad. I have no,
exactly.
I do not have a care in the world right now. I genuinely don't have a care in the world. Why am I so miserable? So on a sort of May, on one day in May, I thought, right, that's it. I'm going to do it. But because I have a lot of respect for my flatmate / landlady, I decided not to do it in the home that that I live in, because I mean, who'd want to live there if someone killed themselves there?
Yeah.
So I thought, right, what I'm going to do, I'm going to find a hotel in Manchester, and I'm just going to go there, and I'm going to cut my wrist open in the bath. I've seen it on telly. I'm sure that works. So I headed out, stopped at Asda in Hume, because why not?
Love an Asda.
At least I know where everything is now. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. You don't have to ask.
I went in there and I bought myself a Stanley knife. And because do it properly, I suppose. That's what industrial. Maybe it's insecurity in my masculinity. I went, at least I'm going to go out for once using the right tool for the job. and I sort of took this Stanley knife and I went to the Hilton on Deansgate in Manchester, which is the hotel with the big tall tower, Beecham's Tower. Yes. Because I figured, you know what, I don't want to go out in a Britannia Inn. I don't want to.
No. Treat yourself.
Dying in an ibis. No, don't do it.
Dying in an ibis.
I went on booking.com.
Not on purpose.
I booked this room. And I suppose it's important to it. I did pay for breakfast as well. So maybe on some level, I didn't think I was going to go through with it. But I figured part of me went, no, it's better value. Just go for it. Does it matter if it's non-refundable? Not this time. There we go.
How British of you. This is more. This is a good deal. I can't. I don't intend to eat that breakfast. But
I drove in and I sort of parked up, and again I was like, instinctively doing things like going, oh, I should probably make sure I get up in the morning, put more money in the meter. Oh no, wait, I won't have to. This is fine.
Jeez.
So I went in and I checked in and I went up to the hotel room, and I sort of, it was nice. It was nice enough, nice hotel's a hotel. And I just sat and I sort of looked out at the city. It was a nice view, and I just sort of got something to drink. Again, the ridiculousness of me going, Should I get something at the minibar? Fuck those prices. No. You know,
Jesus,
just,
it doesn't matter.
yeah, it's
Doesn't matter.
I mean, I may have been shuffling off my mortal coil, but there's a line.
There's
Don't
a
pay
line.
minibar prices.
Yeah.
You know. And I got to the point. I went, I suppose I should get on with this. So I went and got the Stanley knife. And the makers of Stanley knives, who may or may not, probably still not Stanley, it has a safety feature on it. You have to get a screwdriver, turn a screw on the side of the Stanley knife to be able to unlock, on this particular one, to be able to unlock the blade.
Right.
And I just went, oh shit, I don't have a screwdriver. Just sat there for a while, just going, how do I get into this fucker? And it was also in that shrink wrap, that vacuum sealed plastic, so it was a bugger to get into at all.
Yeah. Nightmare.
Yeah.
You picked a good one.
So what do I do? So I ended up sort of scouting around the sort of the hotel room to go, how can I MacGyver my way into this Stanley knife? And I got a teaspoon out the coffee kit and tried to use that, and it wasn't working, to the point where I think I actually broke the mechanism of the Stanley knife somehow by using this. I was like, oh shit, what am I going to do? And I thought to myself, maybe they've got a screwdriver at reception. At which point, once again, the brain went, do you realize what you're doing? You are now at the point where first of all, this is very you, that you cannot get a Stanley knife open. That you basically, can you even do this right? Come on.
Yeah.
Amateur hour. This is bullshit.
Amateur suicide attempt. I think there's only amateur. I don't know if you can go pro.
No. And if you did, it would mean you couldn't do the Olympics. So
they couldn't do the Olympics. They'll add anything, isn't it?
Yeah. So it was that moment where I just went, okay. And it's a bit like that asking for a hose in Asda thing, where I went, so again, some poor soul on reception who goes, well, this guy asked for a screwdriver last night, and then today we found this. And then you think about the person, like someone on minimum wage, who housekeeping, who comes in and finds blood and death everywhere, and then it extrapolates out. Like there was a big wrestling event that, in fact, we were Future Shock, which was an indie wrestling company in Manchester that I ran at the time. We had our first show at Stockport Town Hall on the Sunday, which was a big deal. The first time they'd had wrestling there in about 25 years, and I would have been checking out before then, and that's quite impractical to have a member of management top themselves. I mean, it might help tickets if you could suddenly market it as a tribute show, play Candle in the Wind or a bit of Creed at the start of the show.
I mean, Creed, come on.
Well, it's, My Sacrifice was the quintessential tribute video music for a very long time. But again, it's that moment of clarity where the bubble expands, and I went, oh, right, well, I can't go on like this. And it was, I'd love to say that was the moment where everything got better, but that's not how reality works.
No.
And it really took until sort of last sort of year and a half, 2 years ago, when my folks saw me. I was visiting them, and they saw me in a really bad depressive bout in person for the first time, because normally I just don't answer the phone. And they saw me and they went, well, can we help you? And they sort of encouraged me to seek out counseling. And I thought, well, and for you, it was your kids. For me, I've got 2 nephews. So my brother's taken on the burden of continuing the family line for me, which is very kind of him. So here they are. They don't look like this now. They're a bit bigger. That's Nate.
It's definitely related to you. Look at that hair. Look at the red hair.
Yeah. The other one popped out ginger. That was awkward, because my brother isn't. It's a recessive gene. But thinking about them and sort of being around for them and seeing them grow up and seeing them live their lives, and that's a big thing for me at the moment. And it sort of encouraged me to get help. And I wish I'd done it sooner. But my previous experience of getting counselling, I was sent to a counsellor through work once, through occupational therapy.
Good.
And we didn't get along.
Didn't
And
get
I thought,
along.
well, that's it. Well, I didn't realize that you need to get the right balance with the counsellor, because
Yes, you do.
I'd been referred to that, and the NHS referred me to someone who, again, it didn't really work. But I just then extrapolated that counselling is a waste of time, as opposed to talking to other people and realizing that you have to find someone who works well with you. Now, fortunately, I found someone now.
That's good.
Who I've been seeing now for sort of 2 years almost.
Yeah, that's
And
good.
it's made a big difference to me.
Big difference, yeah.
Um,
You should always seek professionals. So something we've said on here is a bunch of times is, first of all, not all counsellors are the same. It's something that's come up a couple of times, because people do, like you say, you do one and you think, like you go roller skating and then you think, not for me. When actually you just have to find the right, sports aren't for me. You just have to find the right fit. I was the same. It took 3 or 4 counsellors to even diagnose what was wrong with me. But more importantly, you have to just keep going to different ones. You don't just keep going back to the same one over and over again. And once you find the right one, you keep doing it. So
yeah, I was very, very lucky, because when the guy I've sort of been working with I sort of saw him recommended by another comedian, as it turns out.
right.
And it turns out he'd counselled a couple of different comics of my acquaintance, and it just seemed to work quite well.
That's good.
So I was very fortunate to sort of fall into that. But it's taken. I wish I'd found it sooner, and I wish I'd tried to address it. And just little things like the stuff that's going on in my head, the sort of, however you want to describe it, as biological or nature and nurture, or however it is, all the different factors coming together didn't happen in a week or a month or a year. It's decades, going right the way back through your childhood, all the rest of it. So a big thing for me was realizing that it couldn't just be sorted in a week or two. And it was going to take time to even understand it.
Yeah.
And it's only even just now, like I'm 45 in April, a couple of months.
Right.
Even now, I'm still just getting my head around it all.
Yeah, it's a long time.
Yeah, and realizing, I think, because the word you used was coping, and rather than curing.
Yes.
And
that's what we talk about.
Yeah. Because everything that kind of gives me grief, the flip side of a lot of the stuff that makes my life harder is what makes my life easier. A lot of the things that are challenging are also, I wouldn't necessarily be able to think the way I do. I wouldn't necessarily be able to do the things I do if I wasn't wired the way that I am. Even sort of, so accepting all that and realizing that I'm a work in progress, that every day is different. And it's not a case of going, right, at some point I'll be better, or I'll be okay when this happens, or I'll be okay when, like when I suddenly moved to Orlando and work for WWE full time and realize that sunblock is a tax write-off as a ginger or something like that. All of this stuff.
It's work expense.
Good. It's going straight on. That'll be my biggest expense. Forget about petrol or gas, as they call it. It'll be sunblock. Is realizing that I'm a sort of work in progress, that every day you just, rather than going, all right, I'm going to try and be better forever, just cope with today.
Just cope with now.
That's it. Just live in the now. And even now, like little things like 2 weeks ago, it's amazing how the counselling thing, and for me, it was very much that often the most difficult counselling sessions were the most valuable ones. The ones that really felt raw and hard and difficult. Like even a couple of weeks ago, there was this moment we went, that's a breakthrough. So talking about shame and what shame is and how that can weigh heavily on you, and self-sabotage and sort of even things like quite early on when counsellor Chris, another
third try to the power three.
Chris Cubed.
Yeah.
Chris Cubed said, "Are you an anxious person?" And I went, "No." Wait a minute.
Yep.
Does that what? Oh, you mean the way I mean, no, I'm not anxious. I mean, I do worry constantly. I am constantly scared of what's
Yep.
going to happen next. I do feel, oh wait, oh God, I am an anxious person, and it's not a bad thing. It's just going, okay, don't get rid of it.
That's a big thing. That's a big thing. People, first of all, the media present things like anxiety in a very specific way so that we're conditioned to believe that's what it is. And secondly, again, media, but also society's preconceptions, see things like anxiety and things like that as negative traits when in fact half of it is to do with evolution, where we've been better at survival, but also it makes other bits of our personality better. I just want to make one of our in the chat, Carl has said something that, like you said, about the shame and things like that. He said the biggest thing he got from counselling sessions was not to approach situations from his childhood thinking like an adult. You can't feel the guilt of those situations with how you would have reacted now, because 7-year-old you would not have had the knowledge and foresight that you have now. I think that's a great comment there.
Oh, good Lord. Imagine if someone flicked a switch and suddenly remembered everything that you did between the age of 0 and 5.
Oh, God.
We'd be cringing all the time. There'd be a lot of memories of walking around without pants, for a start. And just, again, forgiving yourself the journey. You are learning as you go.
Yeah. We've got one of our. I have so many. So I always say this. I've got all of these right up on my board here. I've got little sayings, and one of them is, "We're either doing it or we're learning how to do it." There's no independent. There's no failure. That you're either doing it or you're learning how to do it. And because I don't know if you just talked about failure and shame. I'm holding a pen, but I'm not writing anything. Well, we're talking about failure and shame.
They're very therapeutic to hold, aren't they?
Yeah, I spin them, so you can't see this down here, but I fiddle. I talk about I'm very, very focused on my own failure, and I'm trying to recalibrate myself to get failure out, because I did the same with my diet. I got rid of sweets and binging. But I made it that I didn't want it. So now I'm trying to get failure out by saying there's no such thing. It's not real. The only thing is doing it or learning to do it. You did it wrong, so you do it. That's just not to do that again. So that it's and is that something, because you were talking about failure and shame? Is that something that you struggle with, or what was your shame targeted around?
Oh man, it's an interesting one, because I'm as a bright kid, which I was,
Of course.
as a sort of there were a lot of kind of, oh, you're going to do good things, you're going to do great, and a lot of things. And you'll notice
it's dangerous that
in many cases, in any aspect of anyone's life, the stuff that comes to you easily is not necessarily appreciated.
No.
I was very, 4, 5, 6 years old. I was streaking ahead of everyone else. I was very, very articulate. I was reading early. I was doing all of this stuff, and I kind of stopped trying because I didn't have to. And it feels like a bit of a cliche, but obviously the stuff that happens, and this is another thing that's come up in counselling, is realizing that so many of the things that happen to you earlier in life become the building blocks for the way you live afterwards.
Absolutely.
So becomes a habit. Yeah, exactly. And there's plenty of good reason, don't stick your hand on the stove, but you also form these connections,
Yeah.
I wish I'd learned about the stove thing. I managed to burn myself this morning. But and it isn't, and again, this is the stuff that you tuck away. And it wasn't until I was in counseling that someone else, you internalize all this stuff and you just go, well, everyone else deals with theirs. Why can't I deal with mine? Why am I? Why? I should. Should is a terrible word. Should is an awful word. Bad should. Unless it's part of shoulder, in which case I also have a bad shoulder. So let's not dwell. Where was that? Yes. So this idea that you're the only one who has been through this. Everyone's been through different kinds of stuff growing up. And little things like, so I was born in Canada.
Right.
My brother and I were born in Canada to British parents, moved back here when I was 5 years old. And it wasn't until I realized that, you know what? Not all kids spend their first sort of 5 years of education being bullied relentlessly. Oh,
No.
that's unusual, isn't it?
Yeah.
And when I look back at it, I go, hang on a second. So little sort of village school in Somerset, in Cheddar, which is a real place. I do have to say that to some people who think it only exists for marketing, right?
It's real.
Cheddar First School, imagine I'm like a trick shot for bullies, because I turn up, I'm new, I'm a bit outspoken and weird, I'm foreign, I've got an accent, and I'm ginger. It's like, holy shit, Christmas has come early.
Everything's there.
Yeah, it's there. And it's seeing how sort of expectations are put on you, and then you internalize them and you start putting them on yourself. But they're ephemeral. They're this kind of, you should go out there and you'll succeed. And one day, one day everything will fall into place for you. And I was very guilty of thinking one day everything will fall into place for me. And, as I've mentioned before, some footage missing. Holy shit, I'm 44. But always that feeling of it's not enough. And I've been very, very guilty of, without turning into literally quoting the Pet Shop Boys, when I look back upon my life.
Yes.
Yeah. It's always with a sense of shame, right? I've always been the one to blame, and it's even with my ability to take good experiences and only see the bad part. So I look back on things, especially when I'm feeling down, and you get into that cycle of going round and round and round. It's almost like an OCD thing, isn't it? You obsess.
Yeah.
And to look back on, for example, like the tours I did, and I genuinely got to work with my heroes, have amazing nights out, and overachieve as a fan. If you think of any kind of fandom, I have absolutely overachieved. If I could go back to 15-year-old or 16-year-old Chris, who had just watched Bret Hart and Roddy Piper at WrestleMania, go, that guy, you're going to tour with him. Oh, by the way, in a couple of years after that, you're going to get to go to WrestleMania in Orlando. And because the wrestlers, they're going to get you into the VIP bit where they've got all the catering, and then you're going to go to the after party, and then 16-year-old me would have been great. Hindsight, I look back at that and go, well, some of the gigs weren't very well attended.
Yeah, when it shouldn't, that shouldn't even be a thought.
Exactly.
Because that is an ego thing. That's not even it doesn't matter. It's not well attended. Just people. That's something I've had to really learn with this, because I'm just like, as many people as anyone who wants to watch you is amazing. Not even if one person wants to watch you, it's even if you do your job, even if you only just do the minimum, you're still doing it. It doesn't matter if you're cleaning floors. It doesn't matter if you're streaming. It doesn't matter if you're CEO. If you do it, just doing it is enough. And I think it's harder. People get really stuck in that it has to be above, because we're told we have to overachieve all the time. Perfectionism.
From perfectionism, and that's another thing as well. Is and realizing the sort of the patterns of self-sabotage. It's not until you talk to someone else who can kind of, and that's the advantage of a professional who is not connected to you. And it's something that, especially because friends and family are great to talk to, and it's so important to have that network of friends and family, but they can't necessarily handle you the way that a professional will. And it could be, and it's both from the idea, obviously part of it is the idea that they're professional. They have studied this. They know. It's like the difference between having a mate who thinks he knows what that noise in your car is, and a mechanic who's actually studied it. And so part of it is actually having the academics behind it and the experience. And the other is having absolutely no preconceptions and no bias, because with the best intention in the world, I mean, if you're unfortunate and you have family and friends who aren't supportive, they will make you feel worse.
Yeah.
Sometimes deliberately.
Now, see, I think that, pause there a second, just because I've got a good point on this. I think that is not always the case, because I don't think that it can be the case that a family will be incredibly supportive, but incredibly. Oh, sorry, Chris.
Oh, yeah.
You go. No, it's just something.
No, but you're right in the sense that almost being supportive
Yeah.
can be detrimental as well, because they don't want to tell you, right, this shit needs to stop, or we're really scared for you, or they will try and excuse behavior or enable or do all this good
Yeah.
stuff. So, it's very rare that you'll meet someone who is right down the middle.
Oh,
Because
see, no, that wasn't quite the point I was making. What I mean is that you can have like no, absolutely. Don't say sorry. We don't say sorry here. You're allowed to exist. You say no one says sorry here. We only say sorry if we do something intentional to hurt a person. That's it. We don't. Sorry is something you don't apologize for existing. But like my mum was incredibly supportive and just wanted the best for me. Never any maliciousness, but she would make me sit IQ tests and tests every night, and she took me to a dietitian when I was 12, and it absolutely destroyed all my self-confidence because I was never going to be good enough for that. But she wasn't doing it as a horrible person. She was just doing it because she wanted me to be the best. And I think that it's very, people forget that love can also be a negative force, and so they excuse it and they don't let themselves heal because they're like, but they're in their own head, they're still like, but that was a good thing they did. People who love you and care for you can still do bad things, and not even because they're human. They're human as well.
True.
I just wanted to make that point because it's something that doesn't come up a lot, and it can be very toxic when it gets stuck in there, and you're like, but I love this person and I know that person loves me. They would never do anything to hurt me, and that thought means that the things they did that did hurt you become integrated into your personality because you're like, then they're right, when they're not. Sorry, what are you going to say? Keep going, Chris.
Hey,
I apologize.
say sorry.
No, I was. I can apologize for jumping in on you. That was when it's incorrect, but you weren't incorrect. So there are people talking. So there have been a lot of comments, and I haven't because you're a good speaker. So which is fine. That's great. That's what we want. If only so. Bailey Cream, who is a new follower, thank you very much for following. Exactly. If we only showed a fraction of the kindness we give to others to ourselves, we would be quite a lot better off. That's absolutely true. I always think one of the things I say is, would you accept that comment from someone else? And if you don't, and if you wouldn't accept it from someone else, don't accept it on yourself. And then Claire has been saying that she didn't even feel like she was pretty enough for her parents because she had been a pretty child, so she was, and you're never going to be. And Tefkas is Steve. He said perfectionism is used by a lot of businesses, so they don't have to pay you more. That kind of whittles away. So if you think about it, they're saying this is your level that you should be at in order for us to pay you more, and it's not really possible for you to attain that level at where you're at, but they use it as a measuring stick.
That's also a big thing about business mentality that's been sort of, because work and personal life are intertwined, and it's you, as much as we like to be able to say that if you're working you go home and you turn it all off, is business, especially sort of in the capitalism structure, is about growth. It's about constant growth, to the point where we are kind of told constantly, you need to be better, you need to improve, you need to expand. There's no kind of this idea that we're like sharks. If we stop swimming, we're dead. And it's not true. There's no kind of be content. Look at what you have. Think about what you have enough. When is enough?
We talk about the infinite game on here. That's if you heard of that, The Infinite Game and the Finite Game by Simon Sinek. I mean, that we'll talk anyway. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah. So, and this just reminds me. I mean, one of the other big sort of breaks I had on the way through this counselling journey was that there's a lot to be said for being okay. Okay, I'm fine.
You can be okay. This is the thing that people get stuck on, is they want to be a superhero. They want to be a supermodel. They want to be, and those people aren't perfect either. That is the thing that they miss because they're only seeing this media conception. Being okay is okay. It's great. Being okay is great. You can, and because people have got it as okay is not okay. It's like that. You got to have coffee's for closers. It's that kind of mentality. But it's not real. It's not a real thing in the world. You can just be fine. And I wouldn't say that I am an exceptional comedian or entertainer, but I made my living from it. I'm fine. and I enjoyed it. And you'd probably say the same thing. You'd say that you are fine at your stuff. You'd never say you were great at it, because if you said you were great at it, you'd have to admit to yourself that you were good at something. But you as a, I don't know. I'm like that. I don't know if you're the same, but we're working on ourselves in order to get to the point where you'd say, actually, I'm good at it. And it's just changing all those preconceptions that are already built in. And it's very hard when you're an adult.
Yeah, and sort of patterns of behavior that are instilled when you're young, and then you sort of reinforce them, and you don't necessarily realize you're reinforcing them, and they happen over and over and over and over and over again. And it's sort of, here's a question for you, right?
Go for it.
Especially after you've had a difficult time, a particularly hard time, if you've gone through a phase, maybe like your head squirrels, as a friend of mine calls them, have been particularly, busy.
Haunted brain is what my daughter calls it. Haunted brain.
That's tremendous, right?
Yeah.
The idea that, all right, so there you are. Particularly, I've had it occasionally where I've just been sat and I've just gone, right, that's weird. What's going on? That's a weird feeling. What is it? Okay, what? I'm not. And it's a moment when nothing's wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
And having that moment, go, right, holy shit, what's going on? It's almost like, wait, nothing's on fire. Oh, that's all right, actually. That moment where you realize that you've been dealing with all this stuff for so long.
Yeah.
That the kind of, again, it's okay to be okay. The absence of all of it feels weird.
We've talked about this. I get like really worried if it's okay. So if everything's fine, I start to dread the bad thing that's coming, and then I ruin the good feeling, because I've been sat there and I've been like, I had a really nice weekend. Oh no, and it's self-sabotage, like you were talking about earlier. Because you are like, it can't be okay. It can't. It's not allowed to be. Is that what you were meaning?
It's almost like there's a bit of that sometimes. It's easy again to self-sabotage, but it's almost like it's that when you're used to being under pressure or putting this pressure on yourself, or being in that pressure cooker situation that you've created, the absence of pressure actually feels quite weird to begin with.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's been
the ultimate warrior. Is what I'd call it.
The ultimate warrior.
It's a wrestling analogy, and it's a clever wordplay.
Perfect. Beautiful. Oh man. It's to go on a complete tangent. Okay. But it's still kind of connected, right?
That's fine.
The last year has been hard, obviously. But I have a feeling that personally, and I'm not going to make a blanket statement for everyone. I'll just talk about my own experiences here, because people have suffered horribly over the last year. I've been very fortunate not to lose anyone I'm close to. I caught COVID last September, was ill for a little bit, got better. Wouldn't wish it on anyone, but I've physically and personally and family and socially. Financially, I've been okay. I don't have dependents. I've not had to worry about money coming. I've just about got by, mainly because I have very modest needs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're not driving.
That's how you succeed as a comedian, is you manage your expectations of life.
Minimalism.
I'm just gonna a bit more.
I like reading.
Yeah.
That's.
So, with that in mind, with all of that in mind, right?
Yeah.
I have a feeling that when the time comes to look back on 2020, for all the horror show that was going on, for me personally, it's going to be very, very valuable, because I realized that when I was young, I didn't know what I wanted to do. Then I found stand-up comedy. And then from the age of 25 through until 43, 44, all I really thought about was stand-up. It was becoming a stand-up, becoming professional, getting full-time. To begin with, it's just getting stage time. Then it's starting to get paid. Then it's getting to the point where you're full-time. And then you're into the hustle. You've got to keep the work coming in.
Yep.
And that's constant. It just doesn't stop.
Doesn't stop.
And that's a huge part of my... and that's the thing about being self-employed as well. There's always that feeling you could be working.
There's something I could be doing right now.
Infinite. Exactly. So it's an ongoing thing, and it wasn't until we were all the industry just went away that we were all kind of forced to stop and take stock of things, and that was what happened to me last year. And it's once I was lucky enough once I knew that I was going to be all right financially, that I wasn't going to end up homeless, I wasn't going to starve. That's really what you look for. I realized that suddenly last year was the first time I ever went out and walked and explored Manchester. I've lived in Manchester now for since 2004. So 16 years, right?
17 years.
Never really, 17 now, but 16 last year. And I'd never really explored. I'd never gone out and looked around, and I started walking. My mum bought me a Fitbit for Christmas of 2019, and that kind of inspired me to get my steps up. And I was out and I actually explored it. And I had a summer. I went out during the summer, and I went to parks, and I walked along the canals, and I saw things. And I
saw things.
Yeah, just because I was either, if I was gigging at the weekend, I was at home during the week. That was it. I never went anywhere. And just realizing that there was more to life than what I'd lost myself in. There was more to it than this sort of introspection, and it's still there,
It's still there.
And the challenge is going to be whether, when the world opens up, God, roadmap, June, May, June. We'll see what happens.
We'll see. There's a couple of caveats.
That'll be the test when I go back into that potentially. But it's realizing what's important, and one of the and I've got to do things that I wouldn't have done otherwise, because again, when you're self-employed, everything is around that job. In the same way, almost I would equate it almost to being a parent, because once you become a parent, the child rightly becomes everything. Your entire life has to revolve around that child. And for me, when that was taken away, it gave me a chance to kind of get a bit of perspective on things, see what was really important, and do things I wouldn't be able to do. Like my aforementioned nephews, whom I just showed off, Nate and Josh, for their names. I would only ever see them in passing if I was gigging, because they live in Plymouth with their parents. They're not precocious. And I would see them in passing quite regularly, like every couple of months, but it was only like for a day or a night. And also because I was often dealing with depression, I'd get there, I'd want to sleep, and I wouldn't want to interact with people. And you could always kind of write it off one day at a time, because, that's Uncle Chris, he's had to travel a long way, of course he's tired. And I got to go down for 2 months last year, towards the tail end of last year, and spend 2 months with the boys and with my brother and my sister-in-law, and have real time with them and get to know them. And for all the stress of last year, it's given me an opportunity to stop doing some of the things that were just grinding me down. And I think that's going to be my takeaway from last year, is the value of just perspective. Again, perspective seems to be the overarching theme of all this.
Well, no, I think that perspective is important. See, I don't see it as a child. I didn't see it as a child. I saw it as an addiction, because I thought that children at least tend to grow and develop, and you can definitely, at the end of it, as long as you don't kill them, everything's great. But I see it as, because it does things, even when you destroy it, even you just keep doing it, no matter, you don't change it. You don't try and adapt. We talked about it earlier. You don't try and adapt because you're so used to the behaviours and the patterns. You go and do your 10 minutes in Derby, and all the time. I always saw it as an addiction, and it happens to a lot of people and who are like you and me, with an addictive personality. Because when you've got depression and stuff, you try to fill the void, and that's why comedians are all very specifically have something missing in their soul, and they fill it with comedy. They fill it with audience, and they just need that feeling. And I always see it as a. I prefer your analogy as a child, because it makes it a nice thing. Whereas I see it as like I'm like, just my next hit, just the next hit. That's what it was.
I mean, I suppose if I'm really, I was going to say beat the child analogy to death. That's a really bad combination of words for this metaphor. If you take it to its logical conclusion, I mean, there's much like you put love into something, and you do get love back, and sometimes it will spit back in your face, and it will take you for granted, and you will look at this thing that you love and go, why have I bothered to have you in the first place? Why? And it's just a constant sort of evolution, and it changes. Your relationship changes with it over time, as it should, and it might get to the point where you don't need each other anymore, or one doesn't need the other as much. And
that's a good one.
Or you decide to have another kid, or or maybe fake
and then that kid's better
to escape responsibility for said child. I don't know. We all have our coping mechanisms.
We all do. I just want a quick thank you, AJ, for subscribing, and congratulations to Stretch Next for getting it, because AJ dropped it across to someone else who gifted it. Chris, we're gonna wrap up, so I'm gonna throw it out to the chat. Are there any questions in the chat that you'd like to pose me or Chris about the things that we brought up today? There's a lot of different topics we brought up today. If you've got anything in the chat, we've got the last 10 minutes we will reserve for that. We'll continue talking. We'll continue talking, and I'll put my hand up if I see one in the chat that we can do it. But what I want to finish on with this is, what's the thing now? Is it the therapy that's getting you through, or do you have very specific coping mechanisms that you've developed through therapy? Is there something that you could give to people? What's really funny is the question that's just come up in the chat is, do you have any specific coping mechanisms? Like, what do you actually do when you feel yourself getting low? That's exactly the question I was just asking, and it's just come up.
You know what? It's something that I've realised over the last sort of year or two. Part of it is coping. Prevention is better than cure generally. And for me, I'm starting to recognize when I see patterns of behavior coming up, when I start to see myself getting frustrated or angry, or I feel that it's so the things that I've done, right? The Headspace app has been very useful for me, doing some mindfulness meditation. It's tremendous. It was sold to me by someone who once said, have a look at this Headspace app, you'll like it. The guy's voice doesn't make you want to punch him. And I went, okay, sold. And you're right, I never want to punch him, which is a baseline you look for in meditation, isn't it? So that's, and it's sort of, it's when you start asking questions like, why is this happening? And not judging it, but just trying to observe and trying to understand. For me, routine is a huge deal. Having, because I realize that I will descend into chaos, and you can tell the state of mind generally by the state of the kitchen. The kitchen is state of my mind. And I've been very guilty in the past of going, right, well, it's not about one big thing. It's not like, and that was something that was kind of, again, instilled in me when I was younger. One day you're going to be great. One day this is going to happen. One day everything will fall into place. You'll be a big star. You'll do this. You'll be a huge success, blah, blah, blah. It's not about a big thing. It's about a little every time. It's about a little every single day. And rather than letting everything go to absolute rack and ruin and going, right, I'm going to spend 24 hours without sleeping where I fix everything, which is impossible. Is just a little bit at a time. And touch wood, at the moment, I've got a routine going. Little simple rules for me, like make sure I go to bed with an empty sink.
Yeah,
I don't mean it's literally, but just make sure that, because I know that if I get up in the morning and there's pots and pans everywhere, I'll just go, and I might not make breakfast, and then that'll throw the rest of my day off.
Of course,
and little things. So I've now got like a little whiteboard thing on my desk. I've got a routine every day that I try to stick to, which is to do the Headspace thing, do my bit of yoga in the morning, and I've got a logbook where I just write. And I hate writing with a pen because my hand can't keep up with my brain, but it's good to kind of grounds me,
slows you down.
Yeah. And having not written with a pen for decades, cramp is an exciting experience. So just having that thing, and then getting the habit of having a list of things to do, and then just dealing with the next thing in front of me. In terms of I was going to try and turn the camera on and show you. I'll take a photo and I'll send it to you, or I'll tweet it. Is rather than sort of dismissing the things that I've done, is I've got photos on the wall which are typically behind the screen here now, where I have a lot of people who are important to me, and then I actually went on a mission to get photos that are signed by the guys I've done tours with.
That's great.
I found one Roddy Piper signed photo in a thing, and it had someone else's name on it. But fact, fans, if you want to get Sharpie off of a photo, use hand sanitizer. It comes right off. So I depersonalized it, and it's now just a signed photo, and basically reminding myself to look at them and remember the good stuff, and not dwell on the bad stuff. And it doesn't mean that I won't have bad days or bad thoughts or bad times. It's just trying to keep that sense of perspective on it.
Yeah.
Excuse me. That's actually trying to reach me at the moment.
That's funny. That's all right. We're going to wrap up anyway. Chris, what a perfectly timed. But no, that's absolutely right. I think the small steps, keeping a routine, and trying to achieve something every day. So we're going to wrap up there because obviously Chris's mum's trying to get hold of him. We don't want to hold her up. So Chris, if you stay on the call, we'll say goodbye to everyone. Thank you very much for everyone that's watched. There's been quite a lot of you in the chat talking today. Thank you very much for everyone. We are back Wednesday morning for our tour we're going to France this week so we do virtual tours for people that are stuck at home. So we're doing one at 11 a.m. on Wednesday, taking people to France because one of our members, Carrie, she had a trip booked to France and Spain, and obviously that can't happen. She's in America, and so we're going to take them around France. Last week we were in Iceland. So we're back at 11 a.m. on Wednesday. Thank you very much, Chris. You incredible, lovely chat. It's a lovely, eloquent man that we've had on the chat today. We'll be back next week, 8:30 p.m. on Monday, with another mental health bar. We've got a life coach who's gone through some things, and then they've used that experience to generate their own business so that they can help people like yourself there. So thank you very much, everyone, and I will either see you Wednesday morning or next week. Thank you for joining us. Thank you very much, Chris Brooker. Yes, where can they find you, Chris? Where can they find you? Yeah.
Okay. Broadly, walking around playing Pokemon Go. That's a big help as well. That gets you out the house every day. Look for me on social media. I'm basically at the Brooker Man on everything. I'm on social media. So on Twitter, on Instagram, look for Chris Brooker Comedy on Facebook. If you happen to be a pro wrestler and you're looking for some help in developing a character, I've got one-to-one sessions. Drop me a line. I'll sort something out. But just say hello, and we'll all kind of get through this together.
We'll get through it together. That's great. Okay, so thanks very much. Say everyone bye to everyone, Chris, and we'll see you next week or on Wednesday. Thank you very much, everyone. Catch you later.